Good evening. I'm in the UTC plus 10 hours time zone. It's the 20th of November here, which is the Transgender Day of Remembrance. Viewers are warned in advance that this video explicitly refers to murder, transphobia, transmisogyny, transmisogynoir, sexual assault, and the systematic oppression of sex workers. I started hormone replacement therapy in July. I'm grateful for the time that I've been given. I thought it would be appropriate to pay some kind of permanent tribute to my siblings who didn't get the time that they deserved. The remains of Nikki Kuhnhausen were found on the 7th of December 2019 in the Larch Mountain area near Vancouver, Washington. She was 17. In court, her murderer attempted to use the trans panic defense until the Washington State Legislature preempted him on the 26th of February 2020 by passing the Nikki Kuhnhausen Act. To my most recent knowledge, the trans panic defense remains legal in 40 US states. Dustin Parker was shot dead on the 1st of January in McAlester, Oklahoma, in the course of his job as a taxi driver. He was 25. Ajita Bujel was found dead on the 17th of January in a ravine next to the Kanti Highway in central Nepal. She was 29. She was strangled to death with an electric cable by a client who didn't want to pay her. A man referred to, I believe for legal reasons, as Valera was killed on the 10th of February in Chelyabinskaya Oblast, Russian Federation. He was killed by his roommates after they found out he was trans. He was 46. Nayalisa Luciano Ruiz was shot dead on the 24th of February in Toa Baja, Puerto Rico. She was homeless at the time. She was shot dead after someone posted on social media about her using the women's restroom. Yampi Mendez Arroco was killed on the 5th of March in Moca, Puerto Rico. 5 hours before his death, he was assaulted. He was 19. Patsy Andrea Delgado was found dead on the 5th of March in Chihuahua, United Mexican States. She was beaten to death with a hammer. According to the Chihuahua Committee for Sexual Diversity, her killing was a hate crime. She was 42. Scott Lynn DeVore, also known as Scott DeVore, was killed between the 14th and 30th of March in Augusta, Georgia. They were 51. Monica Diamond was killed on the 18th of March in Charlotte, North Carolina. After complaining of shortness of breath and being put in an ambulance, but before departing, she was shot dead by a 34-year-old man. She was 34. Lexi, who went by only one name, was stabbed to death on the 28th of March in Harlem River Park, Harlem, New York City. She was 33. Johanna Metzger was killed on the 11th of April in Baltimore, Maryland. She was stabbed several times while visiting a recovery center. She was 25. Penelope Diaz Ramirez was killed on the 13th of April at Bayamon Correctional Complex in Puerto Rico. She was 31. Serena Angelique Velasquez Ramos and Leila Pelaez Sanchez were killed on the 21st of April in Puerto Rico. Serena Angelique was 32, Leila was 21. Nina Pop was killed on the 3rd of May in Sikeston, Missouri. She was 28. Hel J. O'Regan was killed on the 6th of May in San Antonio, Texas. She was 20. She was stabbed at work by a 42-year-old man in what appears to have been a random attack. Jane Thompson was killed on the 9th of May in Mesa County, Colorado, by an officer of the Colorado State Patrol. She was 33. The officer who killed her, Jason Wade, did not attempt to use either his taser or his pepper spray. Once Jane was on the ground, he shot her again. Dan Rubenstein, District Attorney for Colorado's 21st Judicial District, decided not to prosecute. Jane was misgendered in all media coverage for approximately 1 month after her death. Tony McDade was killed on the 27th of May in Tallahassee, Florida. He was 38. He was killed by an officer of the Florida Police Department. Officers claim he drew a gun and had a, quote, bloodied knife, unquote. Witnesses at the scene who were not police officers unambiguously disagree. Selena Reyes Hernandez was killed on May the 31st in Chicago, Illinois. She was 37. She was shot dead specifically because she told her attacker she was trans. After her death, he returned to shoot her again. Dominique Remy Fells was killed on the 9th of June in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She was 27. Rhea Milton was killed on the 9th of June in Liberty Township, Ohio. She was 25. She was shot multiple times during an armed robbery. Over the objections of her sister and the rest of her family, virtually all police and news reports about her murder misgendered and dead-named her. Brian Powers, nicknamed Egypt, was killed on the 13th of June in Akron, Ohio. He was 43. Brayla Stone was found murdered on the 25th of June in Sherwood, Arkansas. The man who killed her boasted that he was paid $5,000 to do so. She was 17. Mercy Mack was murdered on the 30th of June in Dallas, Texas. She was 22. She was found unconscious with gunshot wounds at 6:15 a.m. after police responded to a report of a shooting at 5 a.m. Tatiana Hall was murdered on or around the 30th of June in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She was 22. Philadelphia Police Department originally classified the death as a drug overdose. Multiple family and friends pointed out that Tatiana had never touched drugs. Drea McCarty was found dead on the 30th of June in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She was 28. Shaquille Peters was murdered on the 1st of July at a location some distance west of Amite City, Louisiana. She was 32. Police and media misgendered and dead-named her after her death. Bree Black was shot dead on the 3rd of July in Pompano Beach, Florida. She was 27. It's my understanding that Bree's family requested that she be referred to by her dead name, a request which I have here, with all due respect, opted not to fulfill. Summer Taylor was murdered on the 4th of July in Seattle, Washington. They were murdered by a man who drove his car into the group of protesters they were in. Marilyn Monroe Cazares was stabbed on the 13th of July in Brawley, California. She was homeless. Her body was burned and was only found in response to a report of a fire. She was 22. Dior H. Over, also identified as Tiffany Harris, was killed in the Bronx, New York, in July. She was 32. Quisha D. Hardy was killed on the 27th of July in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She was 22. Aja Raquel Roan Spears, also known as Rocky Roan, was killed on the 28th of July while attending a vigil for murder victim Terrell Penny. She was 28. Leah Rayshon Day died on the 30th of August in Cuyahoga County Jail in Cleveland, Ohio. She was 28. Key Sam was killed on the 12th of August in Lafayette, Louisiana. She was 24. Arion Burnett was killed on the 19th of September in Independence, Missouri. She was 37. Mia Green was killed on the 28th of September in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She was 29. Michelle Michelin Ramos Vargas was killed on the 30th of September in San German, Puerto Rico. She was in her mid-30s. Felicia Harris was killed in October in Augusta, Georgia. She was 33. Brooklyn DeShuna was killed on the 7th of October in Shreveport, Louisiana. She was 20. Sarah Blackwood was killed on National Coming Out Day, the 11th of October, in Indianapolis, Indiana. She was shot while walking home from work. She was 39. Angel Unique was killed on the 25th of October in Memphis, Tennessee. She was 25. Unieski Carey Herrera, also known as Uni Carey, was killed on the 17th of November in Miami, Florida. She was 39. She appears to have been murdered by her partner. My sources for this video were twofold. The first was the Human Rights Campaign. The second is Sisters PGH, a transgender-centered drop-in space, resource provider, and shelter transitioning program based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'd like to provide some additional facts for context. First, 2020 was an especially deadly year to be trans. As many trans people were killed in the United States in the first 7 months of 2020 as were killed in all of 2019. Second, most of the people on this list were people of colour. Violence against trans people specifically targets trans people of colour disproportionately. Of known homicides of transgender people from 2013 through 2018, 70% were black. Transgender people in general are at higher risk of premature death. As well as hate crimes, we are targeted by systematic discrimination, which is more likely to render us unemployed, impoverished, or homeless. Consequently, we are more likely to engage in sex work in order to survive. Due to the failure of legal systems worldwide to adequately protect sex workers, trans people who engage in sex work to survive experience a significant additional increase in mortality risk. The vast majority of the departed are from the United States. My jurisdiction of residence is the state of Queensland in northeastern Australia. I would have liked to commemorate Australians whose lives were ended by transphobic violence as well. However, the data was not available. While Australia has hate speech protections, as I understand it, there is no legal construct which would enable the consistent and comprehensive collection of data concerning violence and murder inflicted on trans people on the basis of our identity. We would be ill-advised, however, to believe that trans people are completely or indeed acceptably safe here. We are the lucky country, but nowhere near that lucky. I noted incidences of posthumous dead naming in sources that I thought were unusual in some way. However, the Human Rights Campaign estimates that approximately 3/4 of all transgender murder victims in the United States are misgendered and dead named by government and media sources following their deaths. Going forward, I hope that changes will be made to give my siblings the respect and dignity in death that they were not allowed in life. Thank you for joining me. I hope that there are fewer names on this list next year. More than that, however, I hope to see the day when there are no names left on this list at all.